If you're facing a tax dispute with the IRS, you might think you have to travel all the way to Washington, D.C. to have your day in court. That's where the IRS is headquartered and where lots of federal courts and issues take place. But here's something many people don't know. Tax court actually comes to you. I'm Andrew Bosserman. I'm a former IRS agent and current tax attorney. And today I'm going to explain how the U.S. tax court's traveling system works and why it's often the most taxpayer-friendly court in America. So the United States tax court is pretty unique among federal courts. While most federal courts are tied to specific locations, tax court operates more like a traveling circuit. Tax court has 19 judges serving the entire country, and they literally pack up and travel from the city, bringing tax justice directly to taxpayers who need it most. While the judges are based in D.C., again, they travel all over the United States to hear cases. So in this video, I'm going to discuss how this system works, where these courts and judges, where they travel to, what types of cases they handle, and most importantly, what it means for you if you're involved in an IRS tax dispute. So the whole concept of traveling courts isn't new. In the early days of America, judges would literally ride horseback or in a carriage from town to town. They were called circuit riders. The tax court continues this tradition. Instead of taking horses, judges now fortunately get to use things like planes and rental cars. So here's how it works. The tax court conducts trials in approximately 75 cities across all 50 states. But tax court doesn't have permanent courthouses in these cities. Instead, they use other federal space. Might be other federal courthouses, might be space in a federal building, but they have their space in federal buildings across the country. Each city that tax court visits typically gets visited at least once or twice per year, with sessions lasting anywhere from only a single day sometimes to a week or two, depending on the caseload. The schedule is often published months in advance, so you'll know exactly when tax court is coming to your area. Tax court visits major cities, say like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Atlanta, regularly. Think multiple times a year. But they also make stops in much smaller cities, say like Bismarck, South Dakota, or Cheyenne, Wyoming, as well. The goal is to ensure that no taxpayer in the United States is more than a reasonable drive from a tax court session. The beauty of the system is in the accessibility. So instead of requiring a taxpayer from rural Montana to travel all the way to DC, tax court holds sessions in Helena and Billings, maybe just a few hours drive away. What kind of cases does tax court handle? Spoiler alert, they handle tax cases, but more specifically, what we call deficiency cases. So these are disputes where the IRS says you owe more tax than you paid and you haven't paid that tax yet. Oftentimes this stems from an audit of your tax return that then has gotten disputed and has moved all the way to tax court. Here's the typical process. So the IRS will audit your tax return, propose adjustments. If you don't agree with them, oftentimes they will issue what's called a Notice of Deficiency. And this is also known as a 90-day letter because you have exactly 90 days to petition tax court to hear your case. Once you file that petition, you can choose as part of the petition where you'd like your case heard. And you can check the box for the city closest to your home address or wherever is most convenient for you. And you don't have to choose the location that's in your state. You can choose any location. So for example, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Tax court comes to Winston-Salem in North Carolina, which is about an hour and a half drive for me. But it also goes to Columbia, South Carolina, which is also about the same drive for me. So if I'm a taxpayer that lives in Charlotte, I can choose to either go The two closest places would be Winston-Salem or Columbia, and either works because we're dealing with a federal tax issue, so the location in America doesn't make the difference. When you filed your tax court petition and a case has gotten scheduled for trial, you'll receive notice of the trial date and location. Although tax court can be more relaxed than traditional court, especially for smaller cases, there's still formalities. There's a judge, court reporters, IRS attorneys representing the government. You can represent yourself, although I always recommend having a qualified tax attorney represent you. But most tax court cases actually settle before trial. Only a small percent actually make it to trial, and many cases resolve through negotiations between the taxpayer or the taxpayer's attorney and the IRS attorneys. There are many advantages to this traveling circuit system that the U.S. tax court uses. So first of all, major cost savings for taxpayers. Instead of flying all the way to DC, staying in hotels, having to request PTO time from work, you can just oftentimes drive across town or drive only a few hours to protest your case in tax court. It's also a familiar environment. You don't have to go to DC. You may never have been there. But these judges, they travel on regularly. They're used to the cities, and they might be used to certain local customs or things going on in your area. And also, there's also opportunities for settlement. If your case hasn't settled by the time it's scheduled for trial, cases still sometimes settle the day before, the day of, or during trial. It can seem terrifying about having to go all the way to DC to contest your case in federal court, but it's much easier and probably a little less threatening just to go downtown to the local federal building or courthouse and take your case to the IRS there. So if your case goes to trial in a tax court session, here's a few things about what to expect. So the courtroom is going to be very similar to any other federal courtroom. It's formal. The judge is going to look probably similar to other judges you've seen. They're the same caliber as any other federal judge. They're just visiting your city temporarily. And the key in all tax court cases, and really all matters involving the IRS, preparation is key. Whether you're representing yourself or hopefully you have an attorney representing you, you need to prepare thoroughly. The judge isn't going to cut you more slack on how the law applies to your case just because you're representing yourself. You need to understand the tax law issue in your case and be able to support your arguments with both tax law and proper documentation. Oftentimes, tax court cases live and die on being able to substantiate the issues on your tax return. These are things like receipts, invoices, contracts, sometimes even witness testimony. Everything needs to be organized and ready. So what I'm really getting at with this, the bottom line is that if you're facing a tax dispute, don't let the fear of going to court intimidate you, especially if you think you have to go all the way to DC. Oftentimes, tax court is going to come to you and maybe right in your backyard, and it's extremely accessible for business owners and individuals to take their case to tax court to challenge the IRS. However, even though tax court is a little more approachable and convenient, it's still federal court and tax law is very complex. So while you have the right to represent yourself, having experienced counsel can make a significant difference in your outcome. And actually studies that have been done show that represented taxpayers get better outcomes than unrepresentative taxpayers. And also, you need to find an attorney that has tax experience. There are attorneys out there that have little tax experience that will still take tax court cases, but you're better off finding someone like myself who's worked at the IRS and know how the IRS works to help you navigate your case through tax court. Another reminder is that if you have a tax dispute and have received a notice of deficiency, that 90-day clock is ticking. So you need to make sure that you petition tax court by that deadline because that deadline's firm. There's no exceptions. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope this helped explain more about the U.S. tax court's traveling system. If you have a tax situation or thinking of taking your case to tax court, I'd be happy to discuss your situation with you and see how I can help. But thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.